Do you want to say hi or do you want me to start today?
Oh, hello there.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Welcome. Welcome to today's training. My name is Blue.
And I'm Barry.
We're just getting started today. It's been a little bit of a long day already. I don't know what it's been
Does
like.
it feel like it's Wednesday for anybody else? Am I the only one that
Are you just hoping it's hump day?
a long Monday, but a good day?
It has, yeah. It really has. So, shall we dive right in? You just want to go for it?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's not waste any time. Let's get to it.
Exactly.
What is the thing that...
that they're all here for?
Yeah.
Well, first off, thank you for joining us. Today, we are going to be talking about virtual events and how...
What is a virtual event?
Well, a virtual, a good part of what we're going to be talking about today.
Not that I don't know. I just feel like I answer this question all day long. I think there's so many misconceptions about what is a virtual event. So I feel like there's a certain assumption, like, you know, like even our lead advertising today is like, why virtual live events outperform in-person live events. And then there's a certain suggestion that you know what we mean by virtual event, but I think there's so many different ways to define a virtual event.
Well, there really is. I mean, even what you're looking at right now could be a virtual event. Yeah.
Technically, it could be. It could be a teleseminar, a webinar, a live stream, a live cast.
All sorts of possibilities.
Live,
Absolutely. And actually, before we do that, I want to say hi to a few people. Travis from St. Louis, welcome. Karma from Florida, welcome. NC, I think I'm getting that right, from Hollywood.
Nice.
Welcome.
Love Hollywood.
Everybody want to go to Hollywood. A little Pretty Woman reference for anybody out there. I don't know why I did that. JD Peters from Chicago, welcome.
Sheila from Oahu.
Right. Oh, love.
Awesome.
Let's go to Hawaii.
You're from Chicago.
Geneva. I'm not sure. But from Culver City, welcome.
Excellent.
Keith Melton. Hey, how's it going, Keith? Diana from Orlando. Lynn Dab from the UK. Welcome. Glad a handful of Brits here.
I think
Glad
that's
you guys
Linda
are
B,
here.
don't you?
You think that's Linda B? That may be Linda B. I'm not sure.
Lynn Dab or Linda B, depending on how you read it.
Well, and Martin from Quebec. Bonjour, Quebec. Glad to have you here. I hope I said Quebec right. Hello from Houston, Texas. Dorita, Westlake Village. NC says we pronounced that correctly. Good to hear
Excellent.
It. Yeah. So welcome. Guys, I'm curious. Barry asked the question, and just big picture, type in the chat, what do you guys think a virtual event means? What's the absolute first?
When you hear virtual event.
Exactly. For those of you who have been to A360i, which was an amazing virtual event, if I do say so myself, we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Don't just say that. Natasha from San Francisco, welcome. Annette from New York City. Barry and I used to live in New York.
Yeah, we love New York City. It's our home away from home.
It is. Love New York. So, Martin says I said Quebec correctly. Yes. Thank you. Natalie from Calgary, Canada. Love my fellow Canadians. I'm Canadian too. Just happen to be living down here in the U.S. these days.
I recruited him.
Well, I followed a girl. Everybody says, why did you move to the United States? And it's like, I followed a girl. So
it worked out good for both of us.
Do you mind if before first off, what we're talking about today is, yes, virtual events are in fact outperforming live events in literally almost every single way.
And then I can't help but say this because I got tickled by a number of people who posted in response, like, of course they are. There are no live events right now. I'm like, okay, you might have us on that point, but what we really mean,
what we meant. Yeah.
What we really mean is their in-person counterparts. So if you were to take the same exact client and look at their event a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago, their in-person event, and then look at what they did virtually in the last 45 days, that is outperforming their previous in-person live event. That's what we meant to say.
For sure. Absolutely. Natasha, we're going to be talking a little bit about the platform that we think is best for virtual events. Lawrence from Thunder Bay, welcome. A lot of people saying webinars as a virtual event. Webcasted or broadcasted from Melvin, web conferences. Cool Vegas just says live event, which I love that answer, by the way. I think that's a good one. You fundraisers, says Karma. Can you slow the pace of the feed so we can read the comment section? Haniva, I don't know. I have no idea. NC Cabaret, theaters, concerts. Beth says, yes, A360i was amazing, but before that event, her perception of virtual was more of a webinar, not very interactive or really informative. So, yeah, Karen, we're going to talk about platform for sure. Maria, good to see you as well. So following along in the chat, or at least we are, I want to just say keep the chats coming, keep the questions coming. We're going to get to a lot of content over the course of these 90 minutes. So Barry mentioned one thing that I thought was funny. And if it's okay, do you mind if I...
Nate, you should tell the story, because the one thing that tickled us was people who pointed out that, of course, they're outperforming live events because they're not happening. The other thing was people who really were mad at Blue for
for destroying a MacBook.
Which, I got tickled by because, as you're a techie and you kind of hold your Mac so dear, like anything Apple, super, super dear. So let's talk about this.
For sure. So some of you, well, first off, some of you came here, not everybody came here the same way, but some of you came here because of a video that we posted that had me at a desk, and I smashed a MacBook and then I threw it against a wall. And I took a little bit of heat for that.
Yeah, well, it was sad.
It was. But
what happened beforehand was sad.
What happened beforehand was absolutely sadder. So I'm going to tell you the secret of that particular video. The computer was already destroyed. It didn't look it. It looked really pretty on the outside, right? But that particular computer was already pretty much destroyed. So shall we tell them what actually happened?
I think so. It's a good story.
And I know you came here for content, but a little bit,
we'll get to it.
Yeah, a little bit of humor, a little bit of a smile on your face, hopefully is a good way to start your day. And hopefully if you're thinking you're having a bad day, it wasn't as bad as the day I'm about to describe. So Barry had hurt her knee. And we were leaving the studio one night after an event about 4 weeks ago, ballpark, maybe 5. April, I believe the day was April 4th. So about 5 weeks ago. I
feel like in a roundabout way, he's kind of blaming me.
No,
we'll see how this
is not how that's not accurate.
So I was on crutches.
You were?
And you were like a knight in shining armor.
I was trying to be. I was carrying everything.
It's like he was carrying my school books.
Yep. Yep.
He had my computer and my bag and my purse and all my stuff so I could focus on my crutches.
Absolutely. It was very Canadian of me, beachy 428. Canadian. Absolutely.
All you Canadians are such gentlemen. We love that.
We
about
are.
You.
So we get to the car. I put my computer on the roof, open the door, put my stuff in the car, walk around. I get Barry in the car. Then I walk around back to the driver's side, open the door, get in, and pull away. And about 15 minutes later, we get to the Airbnb, and I'm like, where's my computer? It obviously was on the roof of the car. I kind of doubled back and retraced my steps. And
he flew out of that house. So
oh, my gosh.
He realized it. We're kind of hoping against hope. Like, maybe it's just like laying on a grassy knoll somewhere. Maybe it just flew off into like a little grassy patch.
It landed in the middle of an intersection.
That's sad.
And sadly, really sadly, this was a fully loaded 16-inch 2019 brand new MacBook Pro. Completely destroyed it. Anyway, so let's... So
it was destroyed before you destroyed it. So we just had some fun with that. We'd never do that. We'd never kill a Mac gratuitously with... Yeah, just for the fun of it.
Exactly. So before we dive into some of the results that we've seen, because I think that stuff is really important for you guys, I want to tell you that at the end of this webinar, there's a bunch of things that are happening. There's a lot of people trying virtual events right now. And with consistency, there is one thing that every single person is doing wrong. Well, not every single person. Most people are doing wrong when it comes to virtual events. And stay till the end, because we're going to share that with you right at the end of this broadcast.
And we're also going to share 3 things that we think are the keys to a virtual event experience succeeding. Succeeding in a good number of people registering, succeeding in a good number of people showing up, succeeding in a good number of people staying. And if you're in the enrollment event business like we are, making a high ticket offer, succeeding in having people actually purchase, buy, invest in themselves. So we're going to tell you how am I.
Yeah, so let's tell them about the 2 events that we've done so far that were in about a period of 3 or so weeks.
And the way I would look at this is like 2 perfect case studies, like 2 different audiences, 2 completely different hosts, and a similar runway for both. That's where the similarity, about 3 weeks to pivot from an in-person event that was succeeding, that was doing well. It had great registrations. It was by all metrics going to be a great success, both of these events. And then all of a sudden COVID-19 hit, and we quickly had to pivot from a virtual event from an in-person event to a virtual event. And so let's talk about that. The first one.
So first one last year, they had about 300 people at their live event, and all told generated about $600,000 in revenue from that live event. Yeah. This year, when they went virtual, they went from 300 up to 1,200 people. They had about 1,000 people check into the event, and with them the entire time, between 700 and 900 people consistently over the course of 3 full days. And the punchline, of course, to that particular client is they generated $720,000 in revenue from their virtual event. And I think the really cool thing about that, you think to yourself, okay, that's an increase. It's not a massive increase, but it's like a 20% increase in sales from one year to the next. The thing that's really important to recognize is that the cost of doing an event virtually is significantly less than doing an event in person. So
you've got more reach, you've got more results, you've got more reward, but you've got better net, which is really critical. Like, it's easy to talk marketer math and, how much do we gross on this event and how many sales do we make? But at the end of the day, for entrepreneurs, it's really what you net, like what's the actual profit on the event. And so the real success story is that the sales were pay in full. So at the end of the event, everything was paid. There were no payment plans. And we did close to $150,000 more than their in-person counterpart the year before. And the net was higher. That's sort of like the trifecta, like win, win, win.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great story. With a host who, I think he would admit is fairly introverted. Live events are not his favorite thing to do. He loves doing webinars. Kind of looked at this as like a 3-day webinar on some level. But, for him, it was the comfort of being close to home, having limited team, less overhead, limited liability, getting more reach, more impact, more results, more reward.
For sure.
Hard to beat. So let's talk about the other one.
Yeah, let's talk about the second event. The second event was an event that was originally for about 1,000 people this year. And when they made the announcement to go virtual, the event numbers about tripled. Same event last year generated about $2.4 million in gross revenue. And this year, from those 3,000 or so people, we had about 2,800 people check in, between 2,200 and 2,400 people with us consistently for those 3 days.
All 3 days.
And generated more than 2.5 times the amount of revenue year over year from their in-person counterpart.
Really close to triple. And lower net or higher net, right? More profit. So once again, you see that far more reach, 3x the reach for serving their public. And then the transformations that are happening there, 3 times more what they would have done in person by reaching all of those people. It's a global reach. We had more international attendees than we would have if it had stayed an in-person event. And then close to 3 times the revenue with a much higher net. So, at Sage, we talk a lot about sales as service, income and impact tied together. Impact before the income, meaning that we want to serve people before we sell them, and we want to deliver amazing impact before we generate income. And so I think 2 of the really big success stories are the number of people served that would not have had that support and this help during a really challenging time.
For sure.
I think people are really looking for leadership and looking for content.
I think so too. And the reality is it's also a little bit easier for attendees, right? Even if this wasn't the case, right? Even if we weren't in this state of the world that we're in right now, the reality is coming to a virtual event from a cost perspective, you don't have the cost of the flight, you don't have the cost of the hotel, you don't have the cost of the food. It's a lot more frictionless.
Yeah, and if you're trying to talk a spouse into watching the kids, well, I think it is challenging being home at COVID with the kids and homeschooling. It might be a little bit easier if they're just in the other room than if you're going to leave them for 3 or 4 or 5 full days while you travel to another part of the country or another part of the world. So I think that is part of what's contributing to more attendance, but also higher stick. It's a little bit easier to talk your spousal partner into supporting you when you're just going to be in the room next door.
Yeah. And somebody in the chat asking if we're live. James, yes, everybody is here live. This is not a pre-recorded broadcast. We are here and watching and reading and sharing as much as we possibly can in these 90 minutes. So, Barry Baumgardner, what's next for Sage?
Yeah. So for us, I think just to give you a quick overview, if you're not that familiar with us, we do about 30 in-person live events a year. We've done this for the last 16 years. We work with some of the biggest names in the industry. We have an event for Jeff Walker from Product Launch Formula this week. We work with Dean Graziosi and Shanda Sumter, Fabienne Fredrickson, Ryan Levesque, Stu McLaren. The list goes on and on. So if you're a speaker, author, or influencer who wants to use live events as a way to launch a coaching program or launch your next coaching program or grow your coaching program. Essentially, if you're using events as a platform for leverage in your business, to be seen, to be positioned as the authority, and certainly to make a high ticket offer, we are the strategists that people come to for that. So certainly when COVID hit, it's hard to believe it was just less than 60 days ago where literally live in-person events came to a screeching halt. We had to make a quick pivot. And so what we wanted to share with you today is exactly how we pivoted, why it's working, and why virtual events at this moment in time are actually outperforming their in-person counterparts. So we're going to dive in, kind of peel back the curtain and share some of these stories with you because listen, I think we've talked about the fact that it's better for everyone if people understand what a virtual experience can be and know how to market that, because the more people embrace a virtual experience, the better it is for all of us, especially right now where you just don't know where this is headed. And then, I think it's worth talking a little bit about for those who have not done an event before.
Yeah.
Because I think you might be thinking, well, those are big names. Maybe it works for them, but I've not done a live event. Maybe this is the first year you were going to do a live event.
Well, and I would like to, hopefully by the end of these 90 minutes, and I know we're 20 minutes in, you're about to hit all of the content that you're asking for in the chat. We're coming, guys, I promise. This is a little bit of setting the stage, right? You don't want to just dive right in. Give you a little bit of context for where this information is coming from, because we're not just the people teaching it, we're actually the people doing it on the front lines week after week, doing these virtual events successfully. So I think it's important to have a little context for sure. And
a little bit of motivation, what other people are doing so that you can be inspired to see that you can do it too, which leads us to Kelly.
Well, yeah, because because at the end of these 90 minutes, I want you to think of yourself as being able to host a virtual event and being able to do it easily. Because maybe before now, you didn't think of yourself as an event host. You didn't think of yourself as somebody who could gather people in a room, because that's a little bit harder to do things in person. But virtually does open up a lot of doors and a lot of avenues for people who maybe weren't quite ready to sign their life away in a hotel contract, right? So Kelly's one of our clients. She's in a course that we have called Rush that teaches people how to do live events, profitable live events. And she had an event at the end of April 27th, I believe it was.
I think she'd been working on this for close to 6 months. This is a big deal for her and her business to get out here in a big way with her her next in-person live event. Yeah. And then COVID hits.
So what she decided to do, with a little bit of prodding from us, is first off, she was delaying her live event. Everybody's doing that. That's not a big surprise. But she then decided to host a virtual event in its place. Now, rather than do a multi-day, she decided to stick with just a one-day virtual event. She had about 27, what was the number that I had? 27 attendees. And she made an offer at the end of that day for a $2,000 package, and she had 6 people take her up on it. What did that translate to? I mean, we can all do basic math. 6 by 12, it's about, what is the number there?
You're asking me.
No, 6 by 2, sorry.
$12,000.
It's $12,000. Yeah. It was a $2,000 offer. My apologies.
Yes.
It was a $2,000. I got completely distracted by the chat.
I
I'm
know.
sorry about that.
Some of the attendees are saying they're distracted. It's hard to be the host and not be distracted by that. So
exactly.
I'm not even going to look over there for a second. So basically, she had 27 attendees.
Yep.
She had 6 buy at $2,000.
Yeah.
So she made $12,000 in one day. And more importantly, she figured out her low ticket offer. And this is something she can wash, rinse, repeat. The best part is, how much time did she have to put that together?
About a week.
About a week. So $12,000 in a week, not bad. Not to mention that it meant it wasn't the end of her live event dream, meaning that she was going to sit on the sidelines waiting to see when COVID's going to lift and when we can go back to in person.
Yep.
And I think that is really one of the keys right now. So regardless of which camp you fall into, you're successfully hosting live events, you're hoping to host a live event, you were trying to up level for your next live event. And for many of us, I mean, us included, we do 30 events a year. This completely sideswiped your year and blindsided you. And now you're having to figure it out. The reason we wanted to do this today, just we're seeing so many people get it wrong. We're seeing so many people be confused about what is a virtual event. And we wanted to share, which we're about to, for those of you who are so impatient, share what are the 3 things that you really need to know if you're considering going from an in-person to a virtual or your very first virtual.
Cool. So let's dive in.
Yeah. So the first is this, what we're about to share with you, whether it's 5 people, 50 people, 500 people, or 5,000 plus, it works. This works. The other thing that's really great about what I'm about to share with you is it works with in-person and it works with virtual. So if you're thinking you have to completely pivot your in-person plan, one of the great aha moments of this is we don't think you have to. We did not do that, and we've seen it work exponentially.
Well, and the other thing, if you're thinking about or you were thinking about in the future doing a live event as a way to grow your business, this is a great way to test the waters and work out your offer, work out your content with a lot lower risk. So it's kind of exciting.
Yeah, less risk, less overhead, less liability. And the key to this first, like, peel back the curtain, is that with the purpose-driven payday, it becomes all about service. Like, ultimately, the sale is the service. So, you know, we look at a live event as a purpose-driven payday. What we mean by that is that it's impact before income. We want you to serve before you sell. And the great thing about a virtual event is there's lots of opportunity for interaction, for connection, for teaching, for service. So we always say if you serve them hard, you can sell them easy. And that might seem harder in a virtual event, but there are actually some places where it's easier. And we're going to show you exactly what those touch points are today, because I think it makes a big difference. I think it's why you're seeing virtual events outperform in person, is they're actually on some level more interactive and, believe it or not, less distracting, which leads to the second piece of this. I'm going to spend a second on this because I think it's really important structure for you guys out there to be following. Again, whether you're doing in-person or virtual, it's working for both. And for you to know, because I know we've got some internationals here, we've tried it in different markets, we've tested it in different languages, we've tested it in different niches, with different age levels, with different, diverse audiences. Across the board, this works. And it's what we call the 3x3 PAG. Mm-hmm. So what's a PAG?
PAG is a program at a glance, and it is essentially the flow of your live event. And, some people call it a program, some people call it an outline. There's a lot of different words for
agenda,
it. Exactly.
But we call it a program at a glance. And if you're going to make a high ticket offer, and for us, that's something over $6,000, this is very doable. And we're going to share too that if you're thinking of doing a 1 day, you're not quite ready for a 3-day, we're going to tell you how that works with this too. But let's assume that you're doing a 3-day live event. And that's our specialty. And so the 3x3 structure is 3 things that you want to do each day. So on day 1, content, connection, and community. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So listen, from a virtual event perspective, hitting all 3 of those things is a little tough. Content, that's the easy one. We've been doing virtual events for years, whether it's typically live stream broadcasts, maybe webinars, in the good old days. That doesn't seem like that long ago, but teleseminars or summits, lots of opportunity to get the content piece right. But connection and community is really the other 2 pieces that most people come to live events for, right? So they come to live events for content, connection, and community. And on day one,
yeah, you have to nail that.
Yeah,
right?
it is really important to nail all 3 of those things. You want them to think by the end of your live event, the end of your first day of your live event, in person or virtual, that not only did they get great content, they met some great people, connection, and that's community, and then they connected with the host, connection. You want them to feel as though they could leave that at the end of that day and still have gotten their money's worth. You really want to serve them hard.
Money well spent.
Exactly.
Like if I had to leave right now, it was so worth it for me to get on the plane and come here.
Exactly.
Generally the feeling at the end of that day is I've had so much amazing content. I've made so many amazing connections.
Yep.
I feel so much more a part of this like-minded community that I have a vision for what I want to do, whether you're personal development, business development, serve entrepreneurs, dog trainers, it doesn't matter. Whatever it is that you're doing, essentially the connection piece is I feel more connected to the host, more connected to the team, more connected to the audience. But here's the most important one, and a lot of people skip this. In a race to get to sales, they forget this one. I feel more connected to that bigger vision of myself. That dream that I have seems more doable than it did when I got here. And that reconnection piece is critical. Think about it right now in an age of COVID where things start to seem less and less possible. Not only does your live event seem less possible, your business dream seems less possible. Your next big client seems less possible. If this is your side hustle, you're waiting to find out if you're getting your job back or getting unfurloughed. Like there's so much uncertainty. So if we can give you content that allows you to see how you could do it too, and light that fire in you where you're like, I really believe this is possible for me. And then give you the inspiration through connection and community that you can go out and do it because other people like you have done it. It's a job well done on day one. So that's day one. And then on day two, we're going to do more content, connection, and community. And generally what starts to happen in a 3-day event is it piles up where you've had so many amazing ahas that what happens next? What are your next 3?
Well, so at that point, you start to get a little bit of pain. Yep. Right? Because midway through day 2, you start to realize I'm closer to going home than I am to having stayed, in this bubble. And, let's say that bubble is virtual. You've still, if done right, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes, done right, you can create a great community online. So even with that, I'm going to have to be disconnected from that community. So there's a little bit of pain, right? I'm going back to
especially present right now. Like we joke about this a lot, but I think this is true. I think with COVID, if you're stranded at home, you either realize that you're more alone than you realize. Like quarantine has made you realize, wow, it's like me and a house plant. Like that's it. Or you're with your family and you're thinking to yourself, I love my family. I can't believe how little time I get to spend with my family because I'm always working. This has actually been on some level a blessing to be home with them. I would like a job. I'd like to create a business for myself, time and money freedom for myself where I can spend more time with this family. Or you're spending a ton of time with that family and realizing you don't like them all that much. Like when you got to see them 3 hours a day, it was awesome. But now that you're spending 24/7 with them, you're like, wow, this is a lot. And here's the dirty little secret. You can be surrounded by the most amazing people like family, friends, neighbors, but if they're not your like-minded community, if you're an entrepreneur seeking time and money freedom and your most amazing spouse who loves you and who you love is not entrepreneurial, and every day you're going after this big dream, and every day your reluctant spouse is more and more nervous, you really want a like-minded community. So when we say community, we're talking about the fact that you're surrounded by people just like you, which even when you're surrounded by an amazing tribe, not necessarily that tribe for that business that you're trying to create or grow or scale. So if day 1 is content, connection, community, in person or virtual, day 2 is that pain solution invitation, meaning the pain comes from now that I'm connected to that higher vision for myself, I also know where I am right now. And the distance between where I am and where I want to be is creating a very real pain. And because of that pain, I'm looking for a solution. And guess what your solution is? It's the invitation, right?
Exactly.
What's the invitation, Blue?
Well, the invitation is your high ticket offer, and it's an opportunity. Some people just call it a continuing education course, a coaching program, a mastermind. Maybe it's just a course that includes a community component, and that invitation says, this has been great. And listen, we are huge advocates of giving people everything that you promised them through the live event, right? So if you promise them a thing, they have to walk away with that thing. The high ticket offer usually allows them to get that thing faster or with more detail, whatever the case may be. So it's, for a lot of you who are coaches, consultants, influencers, authors, speakers, it's the ability to work with you on a more intimate level and have access to you a little bit more one-on-one maybe, or one to small groups, something along those lines.
A lot of people overcomplicate this. So when you think about a 3-day structure, regardless of whether it's in person or virtual, you get overwhelmed with not having enough content, having too much content. What's the structure? What's the flow? And what we're trying to communicate to you right now is that day one's as simple as content, connection, and community. You double down on that on day 2, which leads to pain, solution, and your invitation. The solution is your invitation. It's your high ticket offer. It's that simple. And by that point on day 2, they will literally be asking you, how do I work for you? How do I work with you further? And so this structure actually does the selling for you. If you give them amazing service, incredible content and connection and community, they will literally be coming to you and your team and saying, how do I get more of this? You want more, especially when you can see the exit point. And if the exit point is walking out into your living room, it can be just as painful as getting on a plane, right? If you've had that big vision and you're trying to figure out how to get there and you're reminded daily of where you are, I think on some level, it's almost more painful when you're at home, because every night you're not in the safe bubble of the hotel or going down to the bar with your like-minded community of friends. You're going back to bed exactly where you started that morning. So very real pain, in need of a very real solution, and your invitation is the answer. That leads to day 3, which is decision, commitment, and celebration. And in a sales as service world where you believe in serving first and selling second, our decision, I think kicking off the morning of day 3 with the decision point is really critical. And you might think that I'm mentioning or talking about deciding to work with you, and that is part of it. But in a sales as service model, you want them just to decide to do something different. Like with sales as service and experience in this virtual economy, you really want people on the morning of day 3 to think, this is not 3 days wasted. I have learned enough that I'm going to do something differently tomorrow. If they don't, it's just shelf life. It just goes back to being the way it was, which is not great for your brand. So, we're working toward them making a decision to do something differently. And ideally that leads to what? Our other 2 points.
Commitment and celebration. And listen, the decision isn't necessarily a decision to work for you or work with you. The decision is a decision to move forward. Right? A decision to take this information and do something with it. So the commitment is a commitment to themselves first, that they are in fact going to leave this live event. They are going to implement everything that you taught them.
And do something differently.
Exactly.
And then ideally, part of the differently is you. Like they're going to commit to themselves that they're going to work with you. Exactly. So that commitment piece is actually much like the connection piece is being connected to themselves. The commitment piece is being committed to themselves. You just happen to be that solution. That next step is you. And I think that's really important in enrollment theory. So often we see hosts getting this wrong. They are so focused on enrolling people in their program, they forget that if they're not enrolled in themselves, they're not going to enroll in you. Like, if I don't believe I can do something differently, why am I paying you to help me do it?
Exactly.
So your highest job as the host, I think, your highest service is to get them connected to that vision and then get them enrolled in themselves. And then they start to think of the gap analysis. Now that I'm enrolled in myself in that higher vision, I know where I want to go. I know where I'm stuck. And look, here's the solution, the invitation. You make the commitment. And the last part is celebration. We'd love to have, even in a virtual world, a lunch celebration. Now they're bringing their own lunch, BYOB, bring your own, no, that's breakfast. So it'd be BYOL. Bring your own lunch.
Bring your own box of food.
Yeah, bring your own box lunch. Anyway, bring your own lunch to our luncheon. And this is a celebration that they have committed to themselves and to you, where they can meet that next group of like-minded community, which is the people who've bought into the program. So we can create that intimacy virtually just like we do in person. So just a quick recap. 3x3 structure. If you don't learn anything else today, this is how you deliver a 3-day event. Day 1 is content, connection, community. Day 2 is pain, solution, invitation. And day 3 is decision, commitment, celebration.
And the really, I think, amazing thing for those of you watching, that information can apply whether you're doing in person or virtual. It is a formula that we have used in both formats and it's worked incredibly successfully. The other cool thing is, if you're not ready for a 3-day event and you're just wanting to do a 1-day event, perhaps, that formula literally accordions down. You do content, connection, community in the morning. You do pain, solution, invitation in the afternoon.
Right after lunch.
And late afternoon is decision, commitment, and celebration. And that structure works incredibly well in a live event, in person or virtual environment. So the great thing, hopefully, for those of you that are thinking to yourself, gosh, I really hope that I get to be, go back into the live event space at some point soon. And there's a lot of us out there. Know that what you just learned, that information that you just got over the course of the last 15 minutes, talking about a purpose-driven payday, talking about the 3x3 PAG, that stuff is what we have used over the course of 16 years for hundreds of events, generating over $450 million for our clients. So, I mean, that'll.
Yeah, and here's the thing:
if you
I just
learn
saw
nothing
someone
else,
mention something about a high ticket offer. Don't forget our story about Kelly, who was doing a low ticket offer, $2,000. So she took that same formula, collapsed it from a 3-day to a 1-day, still serving her people, 27, whatever it was, people there. 6 ended up buying her low ticket offer, which is $2,000, and she generated $12,000. So the heart of this is serve your people first. Hopefully you're getting that before you sell them. You're not going to sell everybody in a room, but if you're in the business of trying to launch a coaching program or service, enrollment is at the heart of it, and so is transformation. So the goal is that you're serving everyone. And then for those who want additional support, hand-holding support, or they want to cut a check for speed, they simply want to get there faster, then there's your invitation to do that for them. I mean, I see that as the highest service. So let's talk about how that leads into what actually happens at a virtual event and what's different. So we've talked a lot about the first 2 tips. It works in person and it works in virtual. Our belief, now that we've done several of these, is that 80% is the same. And that's great news for you, because whether you've been doing in-person events or you were about to, the stuff that you're going to learn to do virtual applies to in-person. 80% of it is the same. The 20% that's different is what we've drilled down to be tech and touch. The different points are technology and touch points. And so, Blue, I want to walk them through what a few of those are. This is really your specialty. I want you to talk a little bit about what you did to enhance tech and touch. But also, we've been saying a lot that in this virtual economy, experience is the new currency. So something that's really critical is that you really think about the attendee's experience and the host experience in order for this to work. And that too comes down to tech and touch. So Blue, let's talk about some of the things that we did differently, things that were virtualized essentially from in-person over to virtual.
For sure. So I think it's important when we talk about this is to chat about it from the from 2 perspectives. Number one, from the attendee's perspective, because I think that's obviously probably the most important thing. But let's also not forget the host's perspective, because while this format that you and I are doing right now is great,
it's awesome,
but it's really one way, right? I'm watching the chat so I can see what you guys are typing, but I'm really just talking to the camera. I don't have anybody talking back to me. So thinking about the host's experience, also incredibly important. The other thing to think about is, what does it look like to get people to actually show up? Because none of what you're putting together matters if they don't actually show. And you may have heard some of the, or caught some of the numbers that we were talking about earlier today, where, that one event for 1,000 people had 700 to 800 people with us over the course of 3 days. Those are 3 full days, starting at about 11 o'clock in the morning, going till about 7 o'clock in the evening, Eastern time for us. That's what we've been doing. And yes, that's not a full, 8 hours? That's not a full 8 hours. There is a mid-morning break that's, 20 to 30 minutes. There's a break for lunch and a mid-afternoon break. So, probably about 6-hour-long days. But
so
they are full event.
In person, but that's still a lot longer than a webinar. It's
for sure. So
a lot longer than your average telesummit.
Well, and let's actually compare it to a webinar for a moment, right? Or even this broadcast that we have right now. We had about 1,000 people sign up to show up live to this broadcast, and right now, if I go back and I take a look, we have 341 of you with us, and we are thrilled that
thank you for being here.
Yeah, that you are here. We're happy to be doing this.
And it's a percentage, right?
Well, and it's a small percentage, and pretty on point, right? Most people are, when they do a webinar, you see about a 20 to 30% attendance rate.
So how can you, for lack of a better word, game that system to get people to take your virtual experience differently
and show
for them
up,
to perceive it differently, not see it as a webinar, not see it as a Facebook Live, not see it as a telesummit, and actually show up. Not only show up for the first session, but show up for all 3 days.
Exactly.
So let's talk about that. What's the first thing you did differently?
The first thing that we did differently actually wasn't me. The first thing that we did differently was we made a decision early on that there would be no recordings of this live event. So if you missed the live event, much like if you don't go into a ballroom when you're at a live event, you missed it. Right. So that was number one.
And the hallucination is that they're at home. It's easier to skip. You're like, I'll catch what I can. I'll watch the other things on a replay.
There'll be a replay.
So there's no recording. So you have to catch it live.
Exactly.
And we want that for stick, because if you think back to the 3x3 PAG, the sessions build on each other. So to miss a little is to miss a lot. So we want them to be there with us all 3 days. So
the next thing that we did was actually an idea that you came up with, which was we sent them a swag box or an event package in the mail. It actually arrived via FedEx the day before the live event took place.
With some fun swag.
And we did it for a couple of reasons, but in the end, there is no better email reminder than something that is not email, right? Because the biggest problem with virtual events or with things that are online, you sign up for something, and I'm sure some of you who may be joining us just right now were like, oh yeah, there's that thing that I was supposed to do, right? Or maybe you saw the email, maybe you didn't.
But if a guy from FedEx had showed up at your door.
Exactly. And
with
says,
a box full of goodies.
Here you go. Now all of a sudden we're making the event real to you, right? And it's like, oh yeah, I've got that event in the next couple days. Really cool. And then you start opening it up and maybe you get a branded notebook. Maybe you get a branded pen. Maybe you get a cool water bottle or a hat or a t-shirt. And then there's some printed material that's like a welcome to the event. There's
a journal or a workbook.
Binder, exactly. And now all of a sudden we've made this virtual thing that you can't touch, right? Because it's just, ones and zeros and
somewhere.
bits and bytes or what have you. And we've made it tactile. We've made it real.
I love that. That was something you came up with. I thought really worked.
It's funny. I'm giving her credit. She's giving me credit.
I think we maybe jointly came up with that. I don't know. Maybe I came up with it. He refined it. But I think it made a big difference in just drawing a line in the sand. This is a different style event, and people were more curious to show up, which led to the next piece that has to be different. The tech and the touch that have to be different.
Yep. So the next thing that we did, that was step number one. So before the event even happened, they got something in the mail that made it real. The next thing that happened was they got an email from us that said it's time to check in for your live event. And, typically, or even for this webinar or broadcast or livecast or whatever the heck we're calling this one, there wasn't a here, come check in now, right? Or unless it was when we started, we started. But for this live event, for the 2 days leading up to it, or for both of them, we did an in-person check-in. So much like you would have to do at a live event where you have to go and maybe sign a waiver and get your attendee badge and your swag bag, we literally had them go to a website and check in. And through that process, they spoke with a member of our team.
Yeah, I think that's critical. Like, again, think of touch points and also think of your in-person experience. We would not let you walk into our ballroom for a general session for a live event without registering. You would have to go through that check-in process. You would have to have a badge on in order to come in. So if you're virtualizing your in-person event experience, then you should have to go through a check-in process. So initially we wanted that to be an equalizer and to set the tone to be different.
Yep.
We also really wanted to demystify the tech. Our first event, the average attendee was in their mid-50s to mid-60s, right? And so the concern was, are they going to be great with tech? And we're using Zoom as a platform. And so what do we do to demystify the tech? So we assured them that if they came in through the check-in process, we'd walk them through all the tech. We had great show-up rate. Out of 1,200 registered, 1,023 came through check-in. And then we consistently had that 700 to 800 per day. So pretty good stats. And that one-to-one process that Blue came up with our team was having our team actually greet them in person. So when they click the link, it would take them to a room where they would actually have one of our team members greet them personally, like video on, hi, Jane, how are you? Where are you calling in from? Toledo. Well, that's awesome. So let's get you checked in. make sure that they're unmuted, that their screen is on, that they know how to raise their hand, actually walk them through the process. And it was just fun to watch, like the shock on people's faces. They just thought they'd click a link and they click another link and they click another link and they'd be in. But to actually see an in-person counterpart who was greeting them, or if multiple people showed up at once, our team was instructed to introduce them to one another, get the connection and the community started right away during that tech check.
For sure. And, with that, the other thing that we were trying to do, we wanted to eliminate any tech hurdles. Right? So we wanted to make sure that when we were going to start 11 o'clock on day one, that we didn't spend the first 30 minutes going, can you hear me? Can you see me? Is everybody good? And we used Zoom as a platform for these meetings. And it's what I would highly recommend to you guys. There are a ton of platforms out there right now. In fact, over the course of the last 30 days, I can't go an hour and a half without getting another email from a friend or colleague saying, hey, check out this platform. It's really awesome and really cool. And some of them have some great ideas, but for the most part, they all aren't perfect. Zoom, in our experience so far, is the closest thing to a perfect platform, Zoom meeting, not Zoom webinar, that we've seen.
Keeping it simple. And Jenny, I saw your point. Sorry to insult you. It was actually feedback that we got from people who registered for the event, who were writing into customer care and saying, we're concerned about the tech. And so we know the age demographics of that audience, but more importantly, they were writing into us saying, how does this work? And we're concerned about, and could you help? I'm like, easily we could do that. Rather than do one-offs, let's help everyone, every single person.
Yep.
So I'm probably one of the least tech proficient people. So
well,
I would want that
for
same
sure.
thing
And listen, while so many people have been on Zoom these days, right? The majority of us have probably been on a Zoom call at some point in the last 60 days. Not everybody has. And there is a small installation process. So by having them go through that tech check process, they got Zoom installed on their computer. They did it once already. So when it was time to start at 11 a.m., they were ready to go, like you said.
And that led to the next diffusion of a potential problem, is the event starting late because people hadn't checked in or weren't sure how to use the tech, or were confused about where to show up and where to go, or didn't know that we were expecting them to have their cameras on. Yep. Like the number of people that showed up to registration with,
there was one person who was like leaning back like this, kind of almost in a big lazy boy, and all of a sudden, somebody pops in, and I'm like, "Hi, how's it going?" I'm Blue. It's like that person was like, right, and all of a sudden, there's somebody I'm actually talking to.
But if you think about where we started with this, is interactivity, connectivity, building community, having a connection, and creating a real experience. We did that with the advanced notifications. We did that with the swag box, and then we did that with the in-person check-in. So that led to a really warm audience when we started on time on day one, with a really good percentage of our audience with us.
Yeah. And one of the reasons that we chose Zoom was because wanting to continue with the connection and community aspect, it allowed us to do something called breakouts. And I don't mean breakouts in the sense that you typically see them from a live event perspective, meaning you go to a different room and you learn a different thing from a different speaker. Zoom has a feature built into it, and it's available at all levels, by the way. If you have the free version, all you need to, all the way up to the business or pro versions, or even enterprise, of course, you can get the Zoom breakout feature enabled. It's just a function of going into the settings and checking the box inside of your meeting settings. So not many people, or a lot of people, don't realize they have it. It's not something special. It's not something you have to pay for,
and
which is
fairly
amazing.
Easy to use, right?
It is, yeah. So what we did throughout the course of the event is we broke down those attendees into small groups and had them do exercises. And essentially, we incorporated something that most of our hosts do when it's in person. A good friend of ours called by the name of John Berghoff is actually, I don't know if he coined the phrase, but he's the one that I heard it from first, something called active learning, right? So first you hear it from the host, your auditory learning. Then they give you an exercise and say, all right, now write down what you think about this, or write down 3 ideas about this. That's your, is that visual? Visual learning? No, kinesthetic.
Kinesthetic.
I always get this wrong. There's 3 types of learnings. It's like auditory, visual, and kinesthetic, and I always get them wrong. But anyway, first one, you hear it.
Hear it.
Second
write
is
it.
you write it. And then the last one is you talk about it. So in those breakouts, in the middle of session, we actually broke them down into small groups of 4, 5, or 6 people and allowed them to connect with each other for extended periods. And when I say extended periods, I don't mean like an hour and a half.
No, like 10 minutes
like
here,
10 to 15 minutes
here.
of
but
group
if you think
learning.
about it, in an in-person event, we often do crescent rounds where we take a round table, set half of it with the audience facing the stage, right? So no one has their back to the stage, and we'll give them an exercise. Like you do some amazing teaching, and then you want to make sure they understand it and that they're implementing it. So you say, okay, share it at your table or do a pair share. The great thing about breakouts, whether again, you have an audience of 50, 500, 5,000, is that you can use that breakout feature to put them into small groups of 2, of 4, of 6, of 10. And it is that equivalent of having them go around the table. So it's a really great feature for, again, improving connection, connectivity, and community while they're learning the content. And so we got rave reviews on that because I think in some ways it was less distracting than being at a table. Another great feature of Breakout is that it gives you a timer.
Yep.
And
one of the
dumps them
hardest
back into the general session.
You know, we joke a lot. There's some things that are a lot easier virtually than they are in person, and controlling your audience is one of them.
Actually, one of them.
As an event producer, you know, trying to get people from the hallway back into the ballroom to get started on time. Like you have chimes, you have maybe a cue song, you have people tapping people on the shoulder saying, "Come on, come on." But with these, you know, you didn't have to say, "Hey, can everybody hear me? If you can hear my voice, raise your hand." None of that stuff from stage. Literally, when we were done, you would click a button and 60-second countdown timer, let people, you know, wrap up their conversations, and then they drop back into the breakouts. So the breakout functionality of Zoom is incredibly powerful. And if you're going to be hosting a virtual event, I think Zoom is the platform to go, and definitely leverage breakouts as a touch point because it helps create the connection and the community. Remember, we talked about the fact that people come to live events for 3 things: content, easy; connection, and community. Hard, typically. Zoom makes it easy, makes it doable. And we found a lot of the comments that we got from attendees were that they made better connections at this event than they had previously. So,
by the way, that was true for sponsors too. We used that same feature to have sponsors. So I know a lot of you were thinking, I can't do sponsors at my virtual event, but we actually had breakout rooms where we featured our sponsors, promoted them as Ask Me Anything sessions, did a nice job setting them up and kind of explaining them as a curated group of resources, and then giving the attendees dedicated time to go in there and ask questions roundtable style. So it's highly effective for the sponsors who came back raving that they had more interaction and better connections than they normally get at their in-person event counterparts. So that was a big win too.
For sure.
What about coaching zones? They also can be used for that. For those of you who do strategy sessions with your coaches or with your team, we use the breakout feature to implement that as well. For our last few events, it's worked really well. So again, can bring down a big room into more one-to-one interactivity. Let's talk about one other up level that we did, which is what I think of as funification. Yeah. So tell them how funification works. First of all, what is funification?
Well, funification is a word that a friend of ours introduced us to, Julie, how am I pronouncing her last name? Hemrick. Julie Hemrick, we were talking about what we had been calling gamification, which has always been a word that I'm not a huge fan of, and I've never really understood gamification. But she's like, no, call it funification. I was like, now we're talking.
That makes a lot more sense.
Let's funify the process. So going back to keeping people with us as often as for as long as possible, right? The biggest challenge with virtual is getting people to stick with you for your entire event. And one of the things that we decided to do was reward people for actions that we wanted them to take. Biggest action that we wanted them to take was for them to show up.
Right.
So when they showed up, we rewarded them through a funification process where we gave them points for being there, where we gave them points for clicking on the button that took them into the general session room, where we gave them points for
going to help desk
and checking out the sponsors, say. So
love that one. Yes.
Lots of different
booking
ways.
A coaching session. So for any of the things that you want them to do, reward them for doing it, which leads to having a leaderboard and a healthy sense of competition.
Exactly. And we used the funification points and the leaderboards right from the get-go from stage, where we would say, all right, pick a number between 1 and 100. And somebody would say 68. All right, who's number 68 on the leaderboard right now? Let's give them this thing, right? And much like if you've ever gone to a live event and you buy a raffle ticket and, in order to get people to show up on time, one of the things they do at live events is they'll pull a raffle ticket at the beginning and have some nice prizes like an iPad or, whatever. Fun swag, but you have to be present to win. So same thing holds true here. You have to be present to win.
By the way, we also put raffle tickets in our swag boxes. Fairly easy thing to do, super inexpensive. Everybody got one. Whoever was international that we couldn't get the boxes to, we just included their name in the jar.
Yep.
And we could have drawings. So again, it's, I think, important to think about what are some of the things you love in person and see how you can virtualize them to bring in that sense of funify it, and also reward for them sticking with you and being present until the very end.
Well, and listen, we did gamification or funification through technology, right? We tracked actions on a website that we built for the live events, but it doesn't have to be that, right? You could simply have a free Facebook group and ask people to post a picture in the Facebook group and then reward people for taking that action, right? So it doesn't have to be high tech. It only has to be, in this case, high touch, right? So maybe it's, post your 3 biggest takeaways from the day in the Facebook group at the end and tag a friend of yours who you interacted with, right? So how can you do these things over the course of your event to engage the audience and keep them connected to what you're doing?
And, what are things that you love either at your own live events or events that you've attended? We've had DJs, we've had MCs, we had dance party rooms, we had VIP lunches with Q&A sessions, we had receptions, bring your favorite cocktail and join us, and we're going to answer questions. This week we're doing one where we're actually going to have interactive exercises to help basically create networking experiences during the reception, the virtual reception that we're doing. So what are the things that you most love? And most often they can be virtualized, and even on a platform as simple as Zoom. In fact, we think Zoom, for all the reasons Blue mentioned, is one of the best because it's easy for the host and for the attendees.
Well, so let's really talk quickly. Let's really quickly talk. I'll get there, I promise. I just have to do it a little slower. Let's really quickly talk about the host's experience, because those are a few things that we did from the attendees' experience or from the attendees' perspective. From the host's perspective, I said it right at the beginning, it's hard to sit and look at a camera for 3 days and not have any visual interactions, which is one of the reasons that we love Zoom, because Zoom has this full screen playback feature. And actually, this is a photo from what we call Zoomzilla, the studio that we have set up, where we're running multiple Zoom meetings simultaneously. And yours does not have to be this complicated, but you can see that's Pete Vargas on stage at A360i, and he's looking out and he's seen multiple faces. He's seen people's reactions. He's seen, this is me as the MC. I think that's a great picture of the back of my head. This is, Barry prepping for the Speak Off evening. We also had a screen behind him where we could actually bring up 4 different meetings. So again, lots of faces allowed the host to actually walk around on a stage, interact visually with people. Also, have a panel, right? This is a 5-person panel, Barry in person plus 4 people remote, chatting with the host. But while you're on this stage, it was great for me, for Pete, for those of us who spoke on this stage to be able to look out, see the faces of people there, and be able to interact with them in a more one-on-one fashion.
Yeah, you can actually approach them, greet them by name. If someone, you want to honor someone, I love your backdrop, or that, I love what you just said. You can basically call them to the mic, which is put them up on the big screen behind you.
Yep.
Not only are you seeing them, but so is the rest of the audience. So again, highly interactive.
And for those of you looking at that going, oh my gosh, that's a lot of technology. Yes, it is.
That is a lot of technology, yes.
But I want to share with you, for those of you who are, let's say, up to 300-person events, which is great impact, right? If you can put 300 people at a live event in person, online or offline, huge impact that you can have on your attendees. You can share a tremendous amount of, great content and have them be impacted in their life and their business. Well, you can do all of this with just a computer and a big screen TV. Most of you probably have somewhere in your house, a 40, 42, maybe a 50 to 60 inch television. Some of you may be larger. And all you need from there is an HDMI cable from your computer plugged into your big screen TV, and then position your computers on a stack of books. Like, it does not have to be high tech. So you can literally stand in front of your computer with the television behind you behind the computer. And as you're looking out at the camera, right behind the camera, you've positioned the TV with all of your attendees. And now you get that same experience, and it's pennies on the dollar, using nothing but a $4 HDMI cable and a computer you already own and a television you already own.
Which, by the way, could be used for fulfillment events too. If you're trying to think of how to, recapture a mastermind or a group coaching program that you have that was going to have an in-person meeting, this can absolutely be used for that too. It's highly interactive. Whether you're selling something or not, which is really great.
For sure. And let's see, somebody just said it. Steffi B, love.
It's a good excuse to
get
buy
a big television. Exactly.
Absolutely.
So, it doesn't have to cost you anything to do this, to pull this off. This is something that you can literally do next week.
And that's the best part. Like, I love that about Kelly pulling that together in a week. Like, the great news about this is in, 7 to 30 days, you could absolutely be hosting your 1-day or your 3-day event. Limited liability, limited risk, limited overhead, lots of reach, lots of results, and lots of opportunity for revenue for you in a really difficult time.
And for those of you that are concerned about the technology, here's a little secret I'm going to tell you that isn't popular, but it's true. Right now, there aren't a lot of events going on. Live events, in-person live events. There are a lot of people in the audiovisual industry, the AV space, they're suffering, right? Because that's their workspace. Yeah. And the reality is they can help, right? So go to your local AV company and work out a package where they rent you a television and a couple computers and a camera, and tell them what you're trying to do. You can do this, and you can do this really affordably with a little bit of help. And you can do it all by your own. But if you're concerned about that, if that technology is like, I don't know how to plug in an HDMI cable, totally cool. My lovely wife, yes, love her. Not the person who's going to be pulling this off by herself. But for not a lot of money, you can get somebody to come in, give you a hand.
And it's actually a great tip. Like, if you are taking this on for the first time, like if it were me and I didn't have Blue to help support me in this from a technology perspective, a small investment with the local tech team to have a production assistant there to help you in setup and just watching the tech so that you can be fully focused as the host on your audience and giving them your best is well worth the expense, especially if it's your first time. And once you get the hang of it, you might be producing it on your own, but keeping it super simple and affordable, but still having the support you need to be your best self and not be worried about the tech.
For sure. So, and also Chris Fenwick, Wi-Fi is the devil.
Wi-Fi can be a challenge.
100%. The other thing I would do is go out and buy a $20 long Ethernet cable and plug it into your home Wi-Fi router. Yeah, 100%.
Have a backup if you can. That's another good plan.
Yeah. So those are some things that you can think about from the host's perspective. Give yourself a little bit of room to play, a little bit of room to stand, not sit, ideally. And
so much more interactive.
If you
a mix of the two. Some
sessions
where it's appropriate, like an Ask Me Anything session might be more like a fireside chat where you're sitting in a director's chair or or a chair from your home. You don't have to complicate it. But standing keeps it a little bit more energetic, and varying the background and the way you're approaching your audience is more interesting for you and for them.
For sure. 100%. So those are some things that you can consider. Obviously, there's a lot more to talk about, whether it's how to integrate sponsors into your live event so that you can actually pay for the event before it happens, even if you have small amounts of small expenses. There's how to engage on an even deeper level, and perhaps scale up, right? So once you start going over 300-400 people and Zoom starts to get a little unruly, how do you deal with that technology? And it's totally doable. And then of course, we promise to share with you the one thing that most event hosts, virtual event hosts, are doing wrong right now. But before we do, I'd like to invite you to something pretty cool. At least I think it's pretty cool. So Barry and I made the decision about 2-3 weeks ago that we were going to host a 3-day virtual experience on how to host live events. In person, yes. Virtual is the predominant focus of this live event. We're calling it, you ready?
The virtual event on virtual events. It makes it easy to remember.
Exactly.
We're calling to know exactly what we're planning to do. Is really peel back the curtain on all the details. I'm seeing a lot of the questions in chat that, take more time than you can possibly cover in a short live cast. But peel back the curtain on exactly how do you make virtual events work for you. So the virtual event on virtual events.
And as we were trying to figure out what to charge for it, because some people are charging a lot of money for virtual experiences, some less so, we're in a group mastermind with some pretty cool people, some of whom are our clients, people like Jeff Walker, Ryan Levesque, Lisa Sasevich, Stu McLaren, and a few others. And we went out to them and said, hey guys, we're thinking about doing this thing. And we normally produce live events. We don't actually host our own. So we were curious, what do you think this would be worth? And the general response that we got was, I would spend $5,000 to $10,000 to have my team show up and actually have you walk them through soup to nuts how to produce a successful virtual event. So I was like, wow, that's pretty amazing. So at this virtual event, we are going to be talking about, the pre-engagement strategies that you need. And we talked a little bit about them, but how to actually go deep on that. The event check-in process, exactly how it works, some scripts that you can use to actually have your team. And if you don't have a team, friends. Right? Much like a live event. Exactly. Much like a live event. Your
spouse. If
you don't have a full team, maybe it's a neighbor who has the day off that can give you a hand. It's a sister. It's a cousin. A coworker if you're working during the week.
Yeah. It could be, a local assistant that you hire.
Exactly. We're going to talk about show up strategies to not only talk about how to actually get them to show up, but also marketing strategies, get them to sign up. So sign up and show up. Yeah. We're going to talk about how you can scale this up. So as you grow from 30 people to 300 people to 1,000 people to 3,000 people and beyond, because the great thing about virtual experiences is they're a lot easier for people to get to, right? So the easier they are for people to get to, the easier they are for people to sign up for as well. We're going to be talking about offer strategies, and this is really Barry's wheelhouse.
Yeah, we're going to talk about how to design your high ticket or low ticket offer, what goes into the design. And much like a program at a glance, this is one of those areas that people tend to really overcomplicate and possibly even Frankenstein. What I mean by that is you take all these things that you've seen, that you've admired, or that you think work, and you throw them all together in one package with kind of a more is more approach. And the reality these days is people are overwhelmed, and a less is more approach works much better. The reality of high ticket offers and low ticket offers is they're actually more subtractive than they are additive. And I learned that from my good friend Eric Qualman. But what I mean by that is that people are willing to pay you to only tell you what they need to know, tell them what they need to know, versus tell them everything they could possibly know. So if you're super busy, I'd rather you just tell me those things I really need to be successful, not everything but the kitchen sink. So we're going to talk about how to avoid the Frankensteining or the throw everything against the wall to see what sticks effect, the spaghetti effect, and come up with a really well-designed high ticket or low ticket offer that you can use at your 1-day or your 3-day event to get people into your first or your next coaching program.
Yeah. And, much like Mark Powers, who just said, we happen to love boutique events. Even when we were offline, small events are super powerful, right?
Absolutely.
And great intimate experiences. One of the things that we've found is as your events grow virtually, that intimacy actually can stay with you. So while a 1,000 person live event isn't very intimate, right? You have some intimate connections, but it's not a very tight group of people. That's not quite the case. It's actually easier to scale virtually and still include that intimacy.
And the reality too for Mark is that you probably know this, but small events can also generate reasonably big paydays. Not only are they purpose driven with a lot of impact for those people who are getting that intense, intimate experience, but with the well-designed high ticket offer, they can actually be extremely lucrative. Exactly. A 45 person room can generate $500,000, believe it or not.
Yeah. We're going to go deep on sponsorship and how to set up your sponsorship so that not only do your sponsors get great value, but your attendees get great value as well. And of course, generate the types of results that you're looking for. We've had amazing results from our sponsors.
Yeah, and it's important, like from a sales as service perspective, sponsorship is that too. If your sponsors are there to sell something to your attendees, if you can design that sponsorship in a way where they're serving them first, and the focus is on content, on connection, and on community, much like your event is, then you're going to have happy sponsors and happy attendees and not complaints about the event feeling salesy. They're actually going to be seeking out the sponsors for curated content. And when you get great content, you're more likely to buy something from them too. You want more from them.
Awesome.
So we'll talk exactly about how to design those packages.
So this event is happening May 29th through the 31st. It's at the end of this month, the week after Memorial Day weekend. It's a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. There are going to be hours very similar to what you've heard us talk about for the other events that we've produced for our clients, from 11 in the morning till about 7 o'clock at night, 7:30 on day 2. Yeah, Eastern time. And but in addition to the live event, we wanted to try and make this as no-brainer as an offer as possible, and also give you some additional resources to help you go forward, not just online, but also in person. So the first one that we're going to include.
Oh, as a bonus. So something that a lot of our clients come to us asking how to do, which is how to run a coaching zone. So whether you have one coach or 25 coaches, how do you design strategy sessions to enhance that connection and connectivity, to seed the sale? And here's the thing a lot of people get wrong. They're as much about engagement as they are about enrollment. So they don't have to be super salesy. All the closes don't have to happen in the coaching zone. They are very much a part of a big picture of enrollment, which starts with experience and engagement. So we're going to give you a bonus on how to design, how to run a coaching zone, how to script them, how to train your team, whether that's a small group or a large group, so that you can enhance your conversion rates from a sales as service perspective.
For sure. And the second thing, one of the things that Barry has really mastered over the course of the last 16 years doing this and working with clients, is how to overcome objections. And generally speaking, is it 5?
Yeah, just a quick teaching point. We know from 16 years of running 30 plus events a year for all size audiences that it doesn't really matter what kind of offer you have or what type of audience you have. Generally, it comes down to 5 objections. And the objections are time, money, spouse, fear, and shame, which also translates to self-doubt. So again, they're time, money, spouse, fear, shame, and self-doubt. And those 5 objections, if you understand them as the host, you can actually seed throughout the course of the event success stories that have overcome those, so that you can slay those dragons before you make your offer and in your repitch, but also train your team how to cover them, how to deal with them at the back of the room. So even in a virtual world, we still have a back of the room, which is help desk, because once you make your offer, people are going to have questions. And 9 times out of 10, the objections that are standing in their way are those 5. So as a bonus, we're going to give you our training on how to overcome those 5 objections in a sales as service way, meaning that you serve people first, and then you make it easy for them to say, and this is really key, this enrollment piece. yes to themselves first and to you second. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but I so believe in this. And overcoming the objections, it's actually a service for them to help them get unstuck so that they can decide, even if the decision is not to work with you. Your goal, if you're a coach and you're serving them, is to help get them to a decision. And if the right decision is to work with you, then great. Then they can commit and join you in your celebration, which is what day 3 is all about. But it starts with being able to uncover the objection, coach them through it, and get them to an answer. And another little secret in our industry is that this is a long game. So the person who doesn't buy today is tomorrow's buyer. So making sure they're well served regardless, and how you overcome these objections is the long-term play to build a really sustainable coaching business.
Yep. So the Coaching Zone program has a value of $997. The Overcoming Objections.
It's more like $1997. Yeah, we sell that for $1997. So overall, $3,000 in bonuses.
Yep.
It can make you thousands more than that.
Exactly. So with that, some of you are probably wondering, okay, enough already. How much is it? And where do I sign up? So the price point we talked about initially was making it $997. But again, we were looking to make this as no-brainer of an offer as we possibly could. So I twisted Barry's arm, and even right before this particular broadcast, she was like, "Are we still sure that that's the right price point?" And I was like, "Yes, that's the right price point." And she said, "I think you're right
for the price to go up today." But no, we're sticking with it.
Exactly. So the price point to register for the event is $97.
For sure will not stay that price point.
No, it won't. It won't. Barry said, "You've got until Friday," and then that goes up. I said, "All right." So $97. And actually, the link's going to go up on this screen. It's not clickable, but you can go to PB Sage, like peanut butter sage.com.
Or powered by sage.com.
/TVE or the virtual event, TVE. So here, I'm going to drop that into the chat for you guys. pbsage.com/TVE. Yep, Chris, it is $97. So
for the 3 days, and for your swag box, which is going to be pretty awesome, and for those bonuses that we just mentioned. So it really is the no-brainer opportunity for you to join us. And again, it's our opportunity to help educate the industry, to make sure people really get virtual experiences right, and to help support you through this time. Like, we know more than anyone how much we've all been impacted by live in-person events being kind of taken out from under us at the last minute with I think we've all been a little blindsided.
Yeah.
But we're so excited that the great news is that there is this opportunity in virtual. It really can be easier than you thought. And the great news is, with what you're going to learn at the end of the month in May, you could literally take that and apply it just like the people we told you, in a week to 30 days. So literally by the end of June, you could take all this information and be hosting your own virtual event and applying it to create your own purpose-driven payday. That's our goal for you.
For sure. Now, there's a couple questions in the chat, and we're going to get to some of those questions left. We've got another 10 minutes or so.
Excellent.
So any questions that you have doesn't have to be about the event itself, about virtual events in general. Don't hesitate to drop them into the chat, and we'll get to those. Before I do, one of the things that we mentioned early on, one of the decisions that we made with our clients' events was the fact that recordings would not be available. And that's true here as well. But in both of those cases, they offered either an all access or a VIP package. And we kind of wanted to do the same thing as well. And we were trying to think of, okay, how can we make this, how can we funify?
Yeah, how can we make it easy for you to have an even better experience? So for those of you who are looking for the recordings and looking for additional opportunities to interact with each other and interact with us, we're going to have a couple Ask Me Anything sessions included in this all access pass. It's a great way to just up-level your regular ticket. So
yeah, and you'll find out about that after you register. It's like $197. It includes 2 virtual cocktail parties. That's BYOC, so bring your own cocktail. That is the full recordings. The really cool thing about the recordings.
I know, talk about this. I love this.
Oh my! So
courtesy of one of our clients, Stu McLaren.
Yep. So the recordings are going to come about 30 to 60 days after the event takes place, but they're going to be fully indexed and searchable. And I don't just mean searchable like you can find out what video is where we talked about a certain thing, but if you want to find out where we talked about sponsorship as an example, you can type in the word sponsorship, and the search results will not only tell you the video, but it'll take you to the exact spot in the video where we talked about those search results.
There's multiple locations where we talked about sponsorship. It'll take you to each of those places. So it makes it super easy to go back and revisit your favorite parts, or to quickly go to the content you want to share or the content that you missed, whatever it might be. So super easy way to find the things that are most important to you just by typing in a keyword.
Exactly. And then post-event, for those of you that are all access, Barry, we wanted to make sure that you take this information and act on it. We wanted to make sure that you actually take this information and go host your own virtual event.
Implement. We call that ideas into action. Like, not just have them die on the vine is a great idea that you contemplated, but an idea that you actually implemented and put into action. And the best way we know to do that is to offer you an opportunity after the event to ask the questions that once you go back to trying to implement, you're like, oh, I wish I'd asked that question, or I still have a lingering issue around this specific idea that I learned. So for those of you who join All Access, you'll have either me or Blue one-to-one for 15 minutes for a one-to-one consultation.
Exactly. So there you go. So there's those things that you have access to. Barry, let's also talk to them a little bit about what we promised, which is the one mistake.
The one thing we see a lot of people getting wrong.
Exactly.
Including, this is fascinating. I don't know how many of you are big NFL fans and watch the NFL draft, but I was shocked at how Roger Goodell got it wrong.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. I forget which TV.
It was the I think it was the ESPN,
but
seeing
they did a
Roger
great
Goodell,
job with sizzle reel and
their
roles
packages
of the
were
players.
awesome.
But what they did with him in his basement so got it wrong from our perspective. So Blue, let me ask you, what's the one thing that Roger Goodell and a lot of other people are getting wrong with virtual events?
I think for the most part, people in this space, when they look at virtual events, they're coming at it from what they know. And we asked you right at the beginning of this particular call, and a lot of you said, if you were to think of a virtual event, what is it? It is a webinar. I saw a lot of those. I saw virtual conference. I saw broadcast. I saw live stream, lots of webinars. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to take a live event or a live event and virtualize it, people say, okay, well, I know webinar, and this is a multi-day event. So I'm just going to take what I know from webinars and extend it over the course of 3 days. And that's actually the worst way that you can come at this, because webinars, people don't stick with you for webinars. Even, this particular broadcast, there's a lot of you with us, and thank you for still being here. But, people come and they go. And you want people for your in-person events to stick with you. So, especially for webinars, they think to themselves, well, I have to do short chunks because people come and go. Not accurate. Not if you create the right experience. So what you need to do, if you do nothing else from this event, if you don't join us at the virtual event on virtual events, May 19th to the 29th to the 31st, I'm really off today, then at least do this. If you're going to be doing your own virtual event, look at it as a live event first. What experiences were you going to try and create in a live event environment? And can those experiences be virtualized? And in a lot of cases, the answer is yes, right? So in a lot of cases, you can create the ability for people to network. You can create the ability for sponsors to have sponsor booths. You just have to be a little bit creative about it. It may not look exactly like it does in person, but it behaves the same way. It gives people that content, that connection, and that community.
The key is really that experience that we talked about. Like, what is the new currency in this virtual economy? It's experience. So how can you really up-level the experience for the host, for you, if you're the host, and the experience for the attendees, and literally take that brick by brick. What are all the moments from the time they're going to check in until the time they're going to leave? Like, for example, we often at our live events do what we call Afterglow. It's an opportunity for people to get a picture with the host and to do a testimonial. We do a virtual version of that at our virtual events. So listen, Blue's right. Not everything translates directly, but in many cases with a little bit of creativity, not only does it translate, in some cases it's even better.
Well, and so that's the thing. Come at this like it's a live event first. Okay, so the link to, will the sign up be open again tomorrow? Yes, assuming Barry doesn't convince me to increase the price point. So take advantage of that as quickly as you can. It's pbsage.com /TVE for the virtual event. Pricing packages, again, Stephen, it's just $97 for this event. There
flat
is
fee to keep it really simple.
Yeah, exactly. Nice and easy. Chris is already coming, paid their ticket, super excited to be there with us. Chris, we're excited to have you. Thank you very much for coming. What are the time on those days? Anna Maria, 11 a.m. to about 7 p.m., a little later if you're all access, because we have those, Eastern time.
And you will get all of that in a confirmation email that'll tell you all the details you need to know.
Exactly.
And you get to experience our virtual check-in, because for sure we will be having that.
For sure. All right, let's see. At $97, that includes the Sage swag box. It's going to be kind of awesome. I gave Barry Barry and I were chatting about doing the Sage swag box, and I said, all right, this is the number. This is your budget for it. And she just went right past that number. So it should be pretty awesome. All right, Glenda is a keynote speaker. Any suggestions for finding virtual events? Glenda, here's the thing. Check out Facebook. There are virtual events happening every day all over the place, and they need good speakers. We were chatting with somebody who actually does MC work, and she's taking the approach of actually putting together a speaker reel that is specific to virtual and getting it out to speakers bureaus. That's something that you could do as well.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
Actually.
Allison says that's pretty awesome with the searches. I know, Allison, I'm so excited by it. Every time I play with it, I absolutely love it. So our recordings will be that. Is the course paced at a month, or can you go through it faster? Jackie, it's a 3-day event. So we are going to go through everything that you need, everything that we are doing, holding nothing back from a 3-day live event. And not that we're trying to hold things back here. It's just that we have 90 minutes.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do in 90 minutes. So
exactly.
Many of the elements we talked about here, we'll do a deeper dive. We'll walk you through the tech, and then there's some additional things we want to share with you as well.
Exactly. Christy says, thank you for making this so affordable. She's in. Thank you, Christy. I'm happy to have you there. Chris Fenwick, any chance that I could come back onto Alex Lindsay's office hours? Absolutely. Why not? Love Alex. I've been a fan of Alex's for a long time. So answer to talk with him is always yes. And you, Chris. Can the seminar be applied to theater performances? And see, I think so. Right? There are a lot of people out there, right? There's some great performances happening right now virtually. Jeff was talking to us about the equivalent of like backyard performances, where musicians are kind of doing these great impromptu. You know what it reminds me of? MTV's Unplugged series. Do you remember that?
I do remember. I used to love Unplugged.
So did I.
Such a great series.
Yeah.
And there are fundraisers as well. Like, we're starting to see fundraisers be virtualized. I think what you're going to see as we work our way through COVID with no particular clear end in sight, more and more things being virtualized. I also predict that when we emerge back into doing in-person events, that more and more people are going to do both. They're going to want to do an in-person because there's certain unique things and touch points that you can get there. And because of the success of virtual, they're going to want to do that too. That's why I'm super excited that 80% is the same, and that 20% that you tweak on tech and touch is whether you're doing in-person or virtual, which we're going to be talking about during the virtual event on virtual events. The great thing about that is if we emerge sooner than we thought and you want to go back to in-person, a lot of this you can use and apply. And if you want to continue doing virtual, regardless of whether we're back to doing in person, you can use this and apply it. And if COVID goes on longer than we thought, then you're set up for success to virtualize all the things that you loved about in-person events.
Exactly. Melissa Lands, hey Melissa, nice to see you.
Great to see you.
Says, hey guys, will this be useful for hosts that know they are just going to hire a team anyway? Yes,
absolutely.
And
and this is so you can speak with authority about what you want.
I love that you said that.
Implement it. Is that what you're going to say?
So what I was going to say. You go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think it's, so that you can speak with authority about what it is you want. Like, having a clear vision for your team makes it easier for them to quote the business, easier for them to implement your ideas, and easier for you to give them, a clear visual. It's one of those things, the more clear you are, the better result you're going to get.
Yep.
And knowing what's possible allows you to kind of look at the buffet and pluck out the things that you would like to implement.
For sure. Let's see. Somebody asked...
How many people
What cameras are we currently using? Rick, great question. The camera we're currently using is a little Blackmagic camera, just a small one, like a studio camera, but it has an Olympus lens on it. And I'll tell you what, a lot of you have asked about technology, and we actually have a full 2-hour segment that is dedicated to the tech around this. And we're gonna come at the technology implementation of this from, we're gonna start at beginner. Right, so we're going to start at that first setup that I was talking about earlier, which is just a computer and a television behind you. Then we're going to slowly build on top of that. We're going to add a microphone. We're then going to add an external camera. We're going to add some lights, and you start to see how it could grow and how easy it is. And
so your first event, you might do the simplest version, and once you get comfortable with that, you can slowly up-level it, or you could go all in, or anything in between.
Exactly. So lots of stuff that you're going to be able to build on, and just there you go. Let's see, what else can I share with you? I'm just kind of skimming through. What time does it start? 11 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. Our doors will be open at 10:30 in the morning. You'll learn a little bit about what that looks like as well. Yeah. Is Jeff Walker's event still open to attendees? I believe it is.
It is, for sure. You should absolutely jump on that bandwagon. It's
for
sure.
Be
an amazing
yeah,
week.
Jeff's event is going to be fantastic and great content. Jeff is a master when it comes to online launches, and the content for this event is really off the charts. It's actually, Barry and I, while we've produced Jeff's events for the last 5 years or so, I feel like one of the events that I learn the most at every single year is this particular event. And it's great because every time I see the content, and it changes year over year, but I'm in a different place, so I learn something new.
And launch and live events make a really powerful combination. So if you're thinking of launching, it's a great 1-2 punch to be able to offer both.
Yep. Melissa Land says she's in. Awesome, Melissa. Glad to have you with us. Let's see. Very few of them are actually live. Live music has a lot of issues due to compression, especially on Zoom. Mark, good point. And there are some settings inside of Zoom in the advanced audio settings, and we'll cover this, that can actually allow you to eliminate some of those compression issues, because you can actually do high quality audio with Zoom. Just most people don't know how to do it. Rick, A6400 Sony, great camera, love it. Rick Watson, Rodecaster Pro for audio, yep, love it. All right, let's see. I'm just looking for... Melissa says no stages to fall off. It just depends on how you do it. Let's see. Peggy, I actually don't know the sign up for Jeff's event, but if you go to productlaunchformula.com or jeffwalker.com, you should be able to get some stuff. If you're unable to find it, send me an email, events@poweredbysage.com, and we will connect you with Jeff and his team. All right. Sheila says, can't wait to be with you, paid. Sheila, glad you're with us. NC Box, will you email us about this offer and what it includes, the bigger package and what that offer includes? That might be a good Father's Day gift.
I love that. What a good idea.
I do love that. NC, for those of you that don't register, you will, of course, get a follow-up email saying, hey, come register. Terry, live performance is usually over Twitch, Facebook, YouTube, for sure. And, we're using YouTube Live right now as the delivery mechanism. Some of you are watching on Facebook because we are actually doing it on Facebook Live as well. Tracy asking, is this live right now? Yes, Tracy, this is live right now. I agree with you. Terry, live performances are usually done on those different platforms. But if you're trying to incorporate live performance into a live event, then you have to know how to modify your Zoom settings to get there. Rick says he's fallen off a stool. Rick, get back up on that stool, buddy. Diane asks, can she use her web camera? Barry, can she use her web camera?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm like, is that a trick question? I mean, listen, we encourage you to have your cameras on. We love being able to see the audience, and not just us when we're hosting our own event, but I encourage you, if you're going to any virtual experiences, to do that, to support the host by having your camera on so that there can be better interactivity. And if you're hosting your own event, we encourage you from the beginning in your pre-event communication and in your tech check at the beginning to have cameras on. It really does change the interactivity. Think about it, day one of the 3x3 PAG is content, connection, and community. Connection and community are so much enhanced when the attendees can see each other, when the host can see you, and when you know the host can see you. So we strongly encourage that. For sure, we will encourage that for our event.
For sure.
Great question.
Let's see. Allison says, dinner's calling. I hear you. I'm hungry. What's for
JD
dinner?
said, what's the one mistake people make? If you're going back to the original conversation, it's not approaching virtual events properly, like not treating them as a separate experience. If you're looking for another one, it's like a one-up. What's a big mistake people make? I think it's overcomplicating the tech. There's a lot of different platforms out there right now, and a lot of them are great. Not to put any of them down. They do some really interesting things, and depending on what you're trying to achieve, there's like 28 plus opportunities out there right now. But it's pretty hard to beat the simplicity and the efficacy of Zoom. It just works. It's simple and easy to use, and for all the reasons we've talked about here, works really well for the host, for the tech team, and for the attendees.
Maria asked, how about using a webcam as the host? So I'll go a little deeper on Barry's yes answer. The short answer is yes, it's totally doable. That's the first way, when we go through the technology session, the first way I'm going to show you guys how to do this is literally using a television and the camera built in to your Mac, PC, whatever you have. Most of you probably do have one. It is not perfect, but sometimes done is better than perfect. Have you guys heard that expression?
We have a client that we interviewed recently who used a very similar setup to that for a fulfillment event.
Yep.
And did really well. He had huge interactivity, got rave reviews from his fans, and it was super simple tech. He had an offer. He made a good amount of money, going back to what we originally talked about, which is not only our revenues up, but the net is up. So yeah, you don't have to make this complicated. You don't have to spend a ton on tech.
For sure. Mark Powers, really appreciate you, buddy, said, just do it. Agreed.
You,
Mark Powers, love you, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Looking forward to having you with us. Let's see if there are any other questions. I don't think there are. I just want to say this. I am really looking forward to going deep with all of you who said yes. For those of you that didn't say yes and you're not joining us at the virtual event on virtual events, I hope that you take information from this and it inspires you to still host a virtual event. It is a great way to provide great content, connection, and community if done right. And I think it's something that your audiences are likely craving now more than ever before. So with that, if you would like to join us, head on over to PB Sage, powered by or peanut butter, sage.com/TVE. Or right below this video, you should now see a first name, last name, and or first name, email, and a register button. You can use that as well. But Barry, why don't you wrap this up? Because, well, you always have very impactful, profound things to say, and I love to hear you. Well, listen, Barry's my wife. For those of you who haven't figured that out, and I just love to hear her talk.
Oh,
I love your voice. Talk to me, Barry Baumgardner. Talk to me.
Well, in closing, I was thinking about this as I was watching the chat come in. I encourage you to lean into what this next step could look like for you. And by next step, I mean what a virtual event could look like for you. I think that we have been globally impacted by COVID-19. And we have a saying in our industry, the bigger the front, the bigger the back. And certainly, COVID has been a dark place to be. But there is a little bit of a silver lining in this dark cloud. And I think it's just innovating new ways of doing what we've been doing. For years in this industry, in the events industry, we've been talking about what's the next big thing, what's the next innovation. And we've had our hand forced a little bit with COVID-19. I can't remember. I've been doing this over 25 years, doing live events over 25 years. I've owned Sage for 16 of those 25. And I never could have envisioned this kind of change. And I never could have envisioned this kind of opportunity. And if in-person events were still going along the way they always have been, it would have been so much harder for any of us to explore this new virtual reality that we're facing right now. And so I think there's an incredible opportunity without being opportunistic. And I mean that from the perspective that I really do think it's all about service. You can reach more people. You can get better results for them. You can create real transformations in their living rooms, in their homes. You can meet them where they are. And I think people are craving that more than they've ever craved it. They're craving leadership. They're craving content. They're craving connection. They're craving a community of like-minded people. And that's where you come in. So whether your community is 5 people, 50, 500, or 5,000 plus, your audience needs you. And so I hope you'll make a decision to get out there, to put some ideas into action, whether it's in the next 7 days or the next 30 days. Put a date on the calendar and start putting the plan into motion to reach out to your audience and host a virtual event of any size to deliver on that leadership, that content, that connection, that community. The thing that we know to be true is no matter what size you are, whether this is your next event or your first event, it may seem daunting, but it's absolutely doable. And one thing we know for sure is that you can do this.
See you guys next time. And hopefully we see you May 29th through the 31st for the virtual event on virtual events. We'll see you there. Bye for now.